Hello, my name is Mathew Krejci. I'm the professor of flute at the University of the Pacific in Stockton, California. I've recorded the 4 diatonic scales and the chromatic scale, along with some advice on how you can prepare and play them as best you can. The first 2 scales, A major and F sharp minor, are right in the breadbasket in the middle register of the flute where we all sound good. Try to play them with as accurate rhythm as you can, good pitch, and good tone quality throughout the highs and the lows. The next scale, D flat major, is difficult because it starts in the very bottom of the low register in the flute, where it's oftentimes difficult to achieve a full focus sound on those low notes. My advice to you is here, before you record the scale, play a scale going down to the low note and holding it until you get a full focus sound. When you're happy with that, then take a breath and record. The other thing I want to mention here is one of the things that I listen to when I hear these scales, and that's the pitch of the middle register D flat, notoriously sharp on almost all flutes. I'm exaggerating, as you can tell. So play this scale, practice it with a tuner on your music stand so that when you get to the first octave D flat and then coming around the top, when you're coming down the scale, you get to the same D flat and play it in tune. The next scale explores the upper register, the 3rd octave of the flute. I have a few things to say about the high notes when you practice up there. Take the upper register of the flute and end on the high B flat as if it's a beautiful rose unfolding. And even practice the scale going up to the C. When you get a high C, it'll increase your confidence in ending the scale on the high B flat. The other thing is that the high B flat is the only 3rd octave note that can be a little bit flat in pitch. So there's 2 little corrective fingerings that'll help play make the high B flat closer in pitch, up, a little sharper. And that's picking up the first finger of the left hand and the little finger of the right hand. Oftentimes makes the high B flat really close in pitch to correct. The 3-octave chromatic scale at a quarter note to 96 is an exercise in dynamic control and breath control. So simply play the scale as softly as you can and don't crescendo to the top. Try to maintain the same piano dynamic throughout the entire range. Flute Concerto in G major by Mozart, first movement. I like to use a metronome marking of 1/16 to the quarter note for this movement. Get a very good breath at the beginning because you don't want to separate this phrase with a breath. Make a slight crescendo through the first measure to avoid an accent on the first note of the second measure. And then resolve. Count out the 3 beats rest, and then focus your best low register tone in the next phrase, so that the first measure and this measure sound the same. Count out the beats rest at the end of the second phrase. Get a really good breath because this is quite a long, demanding phrase. I hope you notice where I took my breath after the D natural, so that you have plenty of air to go all the way to the end, avoiding so your long phrase finishes this way. Here are some ideas you might want to incorporate in performing the Mozart second movement. I put my metronome on 58 to the 8th note. In the next group of notes, play the grace notes as even 32nd notes. Don't make that G too short. Then continue. Take your breath here after the low D, but make sure that the 2 Ds are equal in quality. Breath. Now the next little musical idea is important here because of the lower C sharp. We want to avoid this. So carry through the low C sharp into the high E. Breath, and then play 3 different A's. with a little bit of a crescendo. Put the G grace note on the beat, as it's actually an appoggiatura, so it should happen directly on beat 1. Count out the beat's rest. The next phrase, play 3 different E naturals. And then it repeats. And then giving more importance to the lower F sharp than to the high F sharp. Count out your beat's rest. Start the B trill on a C sharp, as it's actually an appoggiatura, which was used in the Baroque and classical periods. For the third movement of the Mozart, I return my metronome to 1/16 to the quarter note. Now this is kind of a long phrase, so prepare yourself by breathing a few slow, I call them cleansing breaths, to give yourself good capacity in your lungs. Before you start. Now I'm going to demonstrate something here at a slow tempo so you can really hear a very subtle dynamic thing I'm doing. I apologize for my breaths. I hope you notice the slight crescendo through the first 3 or 4 beats leading up to the high D. What we want to avoid is this. So again, I'll try to go a little faster so you can hear it. You get the idea. Now the next phrase, put the grace note G sharp figure directly on beat 1. This F sharp can be a troublesome note if you play it too short. No. Treat these last notes of the measure as melodic notes. Start the next trill on the upper note, appoggiatura F sharp, and the same with the next phrase. And in the Rompal edition, there are not resolutions to the trill, so that's why I'm resolving it right to the first note of the next measure always. Thank you for listening.